In today's video, I will be doing something different, which is explaining my work process and what materials I use. Not everyone is able to follow video tutorials without the explanation, so I hope this will help you better understand, as I intend to do this for more of my videos. First, I use a 4B charcoal powder to create a base layer using a soft brush. This helps me spread the charcoal evenly around the paper and doesn't drive the charcoal too deep into the paper tooth. As you do this, remember to take note of the larger forms, as it helps to work with the larger forms first and build it down to the detailed areas. Here I use a 6B General's charcoal stick to outline some of these large forms to help give me a better understanding of the direction at which the hair flows. These would be the darkest areas around the hair, and because these areas will stay dark till the end of the drawing, I would be using a harder brush to brush this in, so I drive the charcoal powder deeper into the paper and it stays that way, it doesn't come off. Because there's this thing about charcoal where charcoal doesn't adhere very easily, so sometimes to get certain effects you would have to use, depending on whether you're using a soft brush or a hard brush. That's what will determine how dark it's going to look afterwards. As for the areas that catches light the most, I'm just going to use a soft brush to move around the charcoal powder that I already have on the paper, just to darken it a bit but not completely dark. This would allow me some kind of map to show me the areas that I would add highlights later on. After this stage, take a good look at your work. Keep note of the large forms to see how accurate they are, the dark areas, the light areas, just the general sense of it before you go in with the highlights. I will now use a mono zero eraser to highlight the brighter parts of the hair. Keep in mind that at this initial stage of the highlights, you want to keep the pressure very low. You don't want to use a lot of pressure for the highlights, as even the highlights have layers and you want to go over it the first time, and afterwards there are certain parts of the highlights that catch more lights than the rest of it, so you would go over it again and use more pressure to kind of pull out where the light really hits, like where the light is more intense. With more pressure this time, I go over parts of the highlights that catch more light. It's very important to keep this in mind, as this makes the highlights look even more realistic. At this stage, the highlights just look like lines around the hair. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a 2B charcoal pencil to create depth. And how I will do this is I would be going in between these highlights to pull out more shadow to make them darker. This would allow the hair to look like it has some depth in between it, to make it look even more realistic, so it doesn't just appear to be just white lines around the hair. After applying shadows in between the strokes of the highlights, you would notice that it starts looking more realistic than it did before, as this has now created depth in the hair. So that's it for the video. Tell me what you think. Was this video helpful? I'm always open to suggestions that would help improve my videos, so do leave a like to support the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.